Namaskar. Greetings to all of you. Welcome you all to this today's session. I hope you all are safe and fine in this struggling time. Today we have taken a very meaningful topic and we have to discuss on that. Generally, when we refer to Vedantic texts, we generally start it with a story that is very thought-provoking and very meaningful. So let us start our today's session with the same story. Once upon a time, there was a very rich merchant. Although he had a lot of servants, but he was never happy with the pace of the completion of his work. Even though all the tasks were happening in proper time, he was not happy that the tasks were being completed. And he was not at all happy with his servants. In the meantime, one fine day, a boy came and he said, "Master, I'll do all your work. I don't need any money. I don't need a single penny. But at the same time, I'll do all your work and I'll work tirelessly day in and day out." The master was happy, but he said, "I have a single condition." The master asked, "What is the condition?" He said, "The condition is that the day I don't have any work, the day I am free, I'll just pounce upon you and squeeze your neck." The master was overwhelmed. Okay, what is this? But he thought, okay, this day is never going to happen because I have a lot of work. And he said, "Okay, you come, you join the work." The boy joined the work. He worked tirelessly day in and day out. And one fine day it happened that all the tasks given to him were complete. The boy at the same time jumped and pounced upon the merchant and squeezed his neck. The merchant was horrified. He thought, what is happening? And he immediately arranged some other work and gave it to the boy. But at the same time, he was very much terrified to think what to do of the boy next, because all the tasks he had given to the boy had been completed. And now he had no more tasks that he could offer to the boy. And he was very horrified. And seeing the plight of the merchant, a nearby saint who was passing by the way, just came and said to the merchant, "What has happened?" And the merchant explained the whole story. The saint said, "Okay, I have a way out." Then what is the way out? The way out that the saint offered to the merchant, that we will discuss at a later part. But let us know who exactly are this merchant and the servant in our real life. The merchant is none other than our body. It is the body that has unlimited wants. Even though we give it all the things that we can provide to it, but at the same time it wants more and more. And do you know who is that servant? The servant is our own mind. It works all day long, day in and day out. Even though when you don't want it to work, it works, and it works for absolutely free. It doesn't take a single penny. It works for you absolutely free. So what is the purpose of this? The purpose is that when you don't engage your mind properly, it becomes it becomes a threat to your existence. That is what happened with the merchant. The servant, when he found no other work, he jumped upon the merchant. And similarly, if you don't engage your mind in a proper way, it will one day become a threat to your own existence. Now let us see what our Vedic literature says about mind. In the Amrit Vindu Upanishad of the Atharva Ved, it is said that Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayah vandhaya visayasaktam muktam nirvisaya smritam. It says that the mind alone is the single point which leads to the bondage and liberation of the soul. When a mind that is attached to the sensual pleasures gets bonded to the whole to this world, and the mind which is not attached to anything, which knows that everything else is ephemeral, that everything else is momentary, that everything else is transitory, it gets liberation on its own way. We perceive things and we are able to decipher things just because of the mind. So now the question comes, why do we feel sometimes anxious? Why do we feel sometimes that we are depressed? The sole purpose of that is we don't know what is happening to us. We think that we are all alone in this world. We think we are not secure enough. Basically, we can ascribe three reasons to it. Number one, it is the fear for the future. What is the fear for the future? We think that in the future we might get some incurable diseases. We think in the future my job might get lost. We think I might lose one of my most important loved one in the future. This is something we are thinking of the future which do not exist right now. Next, the number two is the haunted by the past. We are haunted by our past. We are haunted by the lost ones whom we loved a lot. We are haunted by the misplaced trust. We are haunted by some of the very frightful experiences that has happened to us in the due course of life, and we are not able to reconcile with it. The number 3 reason for that, it is the indifference to the present. What exactly is the indifference to the present? We sometimes feel dismotivated, unmotivated, what to do, what not to do. We feel that, okay, I don't have a purpose to my life. And something that is happening, it is just happening. I don't have any stake in it. And at the same time, we feel that we don't deserve a life. We think this life is purposeless. Basically, these all things happen when we get to overthink a lot. What does the science says about anxiety and depression? Science says hormonal imbalance generally leads to anxiety and depression. It happens that when you overthink, you get a feeling of anxiousness, and then it goes on to depression, and ultimately sometimes it leads to insomnia, and it starts a very vicious cycle, and your tail spinning of your emotions happen, and you get to lose whole of the focus upon the thing. Now what happens, what they say, there are some feel-good hormones like serotonin and endorphins. They say serotonin makes you feel good, and endorphin is the body's natural antidepressant. So when these hormones generally get depleted in our body due to n number of reasons, we feel that we are anxious, we are depressed. Now what does Ayurveda says about it? Ayurveda, as we all know, it is one of the 6 limbs of Vedas. That's why it's called Ayurveda. The word Veda is also attached to it. Ayurveda says that our well-being is maintained by the balance of 3 things that they are called 3 dosas. So what exactly these 3 dosas are? 3 dosas comprises of 3 dosas, that is Kapha, Pitta and Vata. What exactly this Kapha, Pitta and Vata are made up of? We all know that everything in this universe is made up of 5 elements. What are those 5 elements? Earth, water, fire, air and space. Now when these 5 elements, you take any 2 upon them, just like we have Vata dosa. Vata dosa is made up of components of air and space. So these 3 dosas are made up of manifestation of 2 of these elements. So it is said that when the Vata dosa in the body gets imbalanced, we tend to go towards a path of anxiety and depression. So what exactly is this Vata dosa? We will focus on Vata dosa. Vata dosa, as we have discussed, it is made up of 2 elements, that is earth, that is air and space, that is the Vayu and Akash. So we know what is Akash. Akash is vast, the ether, the space is vast. It is lonely. You don't have anything to hold upon. It is like a place where you are ungrounded, unanchored. Similarly, a person in whom the Vata dosa is imbalanced feels a generally feels a very larger amount of space part in it. And when you feel the larger amount of space part in it, you feel you are insecure. You feel that you are ungrounded. You feel that you don't have anything to hold upon. And that gives to a feeling of insecurity that later leads to anxiety. Now, what exactly is the Vayu? Vayu, what is the property of Vayu? Vayu says that we know that Vayu is always moving. The air is always moving. It doesn't stay at a single part. It goes on moving here and there. Sometimes it is violent, sometimes it is calm. Similarly, when a person has the imbalance of Vata dosa and when the manifestation of Vayu happens, the person cannot focus on anything. He simply takes an indecisive stand like the flowing air. Like the air flows, he cannot focus on a single thing and he cannot concentrate on a single thing. And that ultimately leads to depression or anxiety. Now in the Ayurveda part also, there is something that we have felt that Sushrut and Charak both have commented on it. Charak has said that Adena means whenever you are depressed, one can get to know by seeing the fear in your face. And what that Sushrut says, it is one of the Manovikaras. It is one of the mental diseases. We also find a reference of Avashad and Vishad in the Ayurveda. The reference of Vishad comes as early as in Bhagavad Gita. The first adhyaya of Bhagavad Gita is Arjun Vishad Yoga. Arjun faces a problem of like depression or anxiety in the battlefield. That's why the first adhyaya is named as Vishad Yoga. Now we have discussed what all is happening in depression. Now, but the real part is, what is the way out? What can we do? The first thing that we will discuss is the expiry date concept. We all know that this world is, the whole world is ephemeral. The ephemeral means it is transitory, it is short-lived, it is momentary, it is impermanent. It is going to get destroyed one day. We feel that we are attached to something like for eternity, like for it is always present and it is the permanent thing. We must realize that pain and pleasure are something that are the wheels of the chariot of life. The pain presupposes pleasure and pleasure also presupposes pain. The existence of pleasure depends upon the existence of pain. If you don't have one, you don't have the other. And the other thing is that we must know that everything that has come to us will also go one day. And every other thing that owes its existence to the impermanent things is also impermanent. That is, in simple words, everything in this world has an expiry date. Everything in this whole world has an expiry date. I have an expiry date. You have an expiry date. Everyone in this world has an expiry date. We think that the whole of the world is eternal. We think that it is going to stay on for whole of the time. But it is not true. And that's why we get attached to it a lot. In Bhagavad Gita, what is said? In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Dukhesa anudbigna mana, sukhesa vigatas praha, bitaraga bhayak krodha, dhir muniruchyate. The one who is not afflicted with the pain, the one who is not elated by the pleasure, the one who has control over his fear and anger, is the one who is always like he has the mind of a steady person. He is the real Muni, what you say. He is the real yogi, what you say. So we must acknowledge that everything in this world will go one day. We are attached to it, that's a different thing. But we must accept that everything in this world is not eternal. Unconditional acceptance of a thing can only give us solace. When we accept a thing with condition, ultimately we know that it will give us pain or pain at a later point of time. Let us assume that a person behaves in a certain manner, that someday you expect someone to bring something for you and he doesn't bring. You think, okay, this would have been the condition, that's why he didn't brought. But the thing is that when you accept something with conditions, later it will happen that that person will not bring that thing to you even though the conditions are fully mature. At that point of time, you will feel the pain. It is always desirable to accept things as they are, objectively, unconditional. Only then we can feel that, okay, we are okay with the life. We are going on with the life and we don't feel depressed. The Madhyam Marg or the path of moderation given by Gautam Buddha also gives us a way out. He says that we shouldn't be adhering to the extremes. Extreme of anything is not desirable. We must follow the middle path or the path of moderation. Moderation in our actions, moderation in our thoughts, moderation in our beliefs will always definitely help us from getting tailspin into the emotions ultimately leading to depression or anxiety. Moderation will definitely help us in making a balance between the extremes and to accept things as and when they come. This is all that what is Buddha is also told. Now, next part, what can we do with reference to our body, mind and soul purposes? We have to rehabilitate our body, mind and soul. We have to ensure our physical, mental and emotional well-being. Now, what we know, the first thing, we have to maintain our physical, mental and emotional well-being to fight depression. We have to keep them aloof. Number one thing, what we can do with respect to body care. Number one, first, wake up early in the morning, that too before sunrise. Because before sunrise, it is the time of Vata dosa. Number two, sleep for at least 6 to 8 hours. Number three, eat warm and nourishing foods. Number four, do exercises as regularly as possible because exercises releases endorphins, the body's natural antidepressant. With the secretion of endorphin, we start feeling good. And later what it happens, it leads to increased secretion of serotonin and that starts a virtuous cycle which ultimately leads to your upliftment from the state of anxiety and depression. But if the endorphins are not secreted, there is a probability that we might get tailspin into the the dark pit or the abyss of anxiety and depression. Hence, it is very much essential and necessary that we must do exercises as regularly as possible. Number two, and also I would like to also add upon, Kalidasa also said in Kumar Sambhava that Sarira Madhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam, that with only the body present, we can do all our duties, we can do all our dharmas. If the body is not present properly, if the body is not in a good condition, how can we do all our duties? How can we do all our course? And another thing that happens in the depression, that we generally get insomnia and we don't get proper amount of sleep. And hence it is necessary that we get proper amount of sleep because as we all know, sound sleep leads to a sound mind. Hence we must sleep properly and that too for 6 to 8 hours. Number two, what we should do with respect to mind. how we should use our mind to tackle depression and anxiety. We must practice meditation and self-contemplation to know what exactly is real and what exactly is not. So much of attachment to all these worldly things will ultimately debilitate us. It will ultimately lead us to a pain and sorrow when we lose them. So we must know what exactly is real. We are attaching so much of emotions to all these things. But do they deserve also so much of attention? That we must know. Because everything at the end is worldly. Everything at the end is impermanent. It is going to go by. I'll give a small reference that assume you are sitting by the river Ganga. And you attach and you develop a deep sense of attachment with respect to Ganga, and Ganga also develops a deep sense of attachment to you. Just imagine. And one day you choose to go away from the shore, and will Ganga follow you? And assume with all the attachment Ganga follows you on your path. Assume the amount of havoc, assume the amount of destruction that will happen. So we must follow our duty, we must follow our dharma. These all things will happen in the life, but we must accept as they are. If Ganga will follow me, then the whole world will be doomed. Assume if Himalaya develops a sense of attachment to me and it follows me to my native, then whole of the world will be lost. So we must be like, our determination, our willpower should be like the Ganga, should be like the Himalaya, that we must be abiding by our work, we must be abiding by our duty, and we must not be swayed away by the emotions. And the next thing is that we must practice hobby, because hobby is something that engages you. And we must take the reference of the story that we had taken in the beginning. If you leave your mind free, it is going to become a threat to your own existence. Engage it with proper things, and hobby will definitely help you in doing that. Number 3, what we can do with respect to soul. Nourishment of soul is not possible if we will not nourish our body and mind. With the nourishment of body and mind, there comes the scope for the nourishment of soul. What we know of yoga, in yoga we have different 8 limbs, that is yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan and samadhi. But we know in yoga that we only know 2 steps, that is asana and pranayam, and we think that is all yoga. That is not. Yoga is something that will lead to your upliftment. That is the only thing that can nourish your soul. Yogascha chitta vritti nirodha. That means in the simple words it is, yoga is something that will reduce the fluctuations of your mind. It is a very vast topic. If you want me to tell at a length on it, we can definitely make another video on that topic. You can mention that in the comment section. We will take that. But something I will say, practice yoga. Yoga is the only nourishment for your soul. Without yoga, without the highest level that we aspire to get the samadhi, without that thinking, we cannot get liberated in our own self. So now this is something that we have to do this, we have to do that. But have we realized what is the value of life? What exactly life stands for? Life is something that is something very, very difficult and very rare to get. In Viveka Chudamani, Sankaracharya says, Jantunam nara janma durlabham. Means out of all the animals, getting a birth of a human is very difficult. What does Bhagavatam says about the rarity of life? Bhagavatam says, Labdha sudurlabham idam bahusambhavante manusyamarthadama nityamapiha dhiraha. It says it is very rare to get the human life. It is very rare to get this form of life. And till the time you have this body, use it for the development for others. Use it for the knowledge to get the ultimate truth. You should always, hang upon to know what exactly the ultimate truth is. What is life and what is death, that you must know. Without the thinking and contemplation on that, we will always be getting attached to these worldly things. But life in its own presents a magnificent glory. Life is the reason for our action. Life is the medium for our action. Life is the medium for our exuberance. Life is the medium for everything that we have. But why we think that this life is not useful? We just think this life is not useful because we sometimes get so much swayed by our emotions that we feel that we don't have anything to serve upon. The problem is that we don't take the value of life as it is. We must know the value of life. It is the willpower that makes the life what we want to make it. I'll give you one example. We must be knowing President Roosevelt of America, USA. He was the president who was present during the World War II and is the longest serving American president till date. What is known to the world is that he steered America to victory in the World War II. I will not comment on his political ideologies or something, but I will take the example of his willpower. But what we don't know, he was paralyzed waist down. During his presidency, he was paralyzed. It was not something that he attained during the presidency. Even before presidency, he was paralyzed. See the willpower of that person. He could go on to occupy the highest position of executive in the American state. Assume he has to attend all the war meetings, he has to take all the public campaigning, he has to do everything. If he could manage doing that, we can also do anything that we want. It is unsurmountable will that we want, that will even not drown in the ocean, that will even not moved by, even if the mountains move, our willpower should not move. With that willpower, we can definitely succeed in getting whatever we want from this life. And we must know that this life is a potential. This life is a potential to serve others. This life is a potential to get the highest potential. This life is the potential to realize our own potential to serve the mankind. And now coming back to the question, what did the saint advise? What did the saint advise to that guy that we had left unanswered in the beginning? The saint had advised to the merchant that even if all your works are over, O merchant, kindly employ that person for the works of your neighbors. Even if the work of neighbors are over, the merchant, please kindly employ it for the benefit of the society. Even if the works for the society are over, then kindly employ that servant for the benefit of this nation. What is the purpose of telling that? Because the whole purpose of this thing is that we must practice paropakara. Paropakara means helping others. It is said that in our Dharma Shastras, paropakaram bahanti nadaya, paropakaram duhanti gaya, paropakaram phalanti vriksha, paropakaram idam shariram. The rivers flow for the benefit of others. The cows give milk for the benefit of others. The trees bear fruit for the benefit of others. And this body is meant to be for the benefit of others. Without engaging our body for the benefit of others, we cannot achieve the highest potential that is possible in this human life. And one thing we all have felt, that the satisfaction that we derive from helping others is unparalleled one. However, self-gratification we can do to our senses, but we know that by helping others, the feeling is something that is unparalleled. And when you have that positive feeling with you, believe me, the negativities of anxiety and depression can never touch you. Devote your life for the service of others, and that is the best thing that we can do for this nation, for this world, and also for our own body and for the development of our own self. This is all what I wanted to say. If you want anything to be discussed at much more length, you can always tell me. We can definitely make a video on that. Kindly mention the same in the comment section. Thank you being with me. Thank you.